Did we really think we would be doing a part 3? Did we
Uh,
think?
in my dreams, Sarah, in my dreams.
I mean, we knew we wanted this to resonate. Look, I've got like all these notes and oh my God. I mean, we wanted this interview to resonate with people, but did you anticipate the reaction?
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, you and I talked about this beforehand that I was like, I hope this comes across well. I hope maybe a few hundred people listen, or have some sort of reaction to it. But no, when you told me like the amount of downloads we've had and how that compares to other podcasts around the world, I still cannot wrap my little feeble brain around it.
We were trending in the top 10 listened to podcasts in the world with like Jon Stewart in the top 10 for TV and film category. Everything has a different category on Apple Podcasts. If you're in true crime or you're in, but I obviously do like television, film, pop culture. We were trending next to basically Jon Stewart. I think the show is still trending. I mean, I told you 200,000 downloads in like 3 days. I've never had anything close to that ever before. It's crazy.
That is insane, like beyond my wildest dreams. But I couldn't be happier about it. I couldn't be happier that people want to hear more. I'm so happy to be back reunited with you again, my sweet friend.
It's crazy. I, like we said, right, in one of the episodes is the Kane show resonated with people. You resonated with people. And I mean, I have to tell you, like, listen, because I listened to our 2-part series probably 4 times, like all the way through.
Yeah.
And it was like an intervention by God. I mean, I just feel like you and I really both have strong faith and we wanted it to kind of be this divine intervention. And it really was. And I have to tell you, for me, I mean, you just being so honest about your recovery journey. I mean, I just think people, oh my God, people shared that. They root for you now. I mean, I just think that was because it's just so brave to do. And anybody that knows someone that has had an addiction, overcome it. And then just like when you're in recovery, all the things you learn about yourselves and the vulnerability, man, you resonated. You resonated.
Well, thank you. That was without a doubt the scariest thing for me to share. But the reason why it was so scary for me to share is because for some reason there is this stigma or this shame to being a mother and having some sort of addiction problem, whether it's alcohol or pills or drugs or whatever it is. For some reason, it's kind of a little more forgiving when it's the man, but when it's the mother, it's like you're supposed to somehow be beyond that, which is insane. It's could not be more bonkers, but that's why more women don't share and don't talk about it. And when you don't talk about it, you don't get help. So I figured I'd be a massive hypocrite if I said, my whole thing about telling my story is I want to help others. And then I held that part back. And the response that I've gotten on that has just, touched my heart. Hearing from other women, other mothers, other wives who are either in recovery or some who are still struggling now and are ashamed and embarrassed to put out there that they need help. But us moms, we carry more than most people do. You know it. So asking for help is.
Look, once you become a mother, you carry all your stuff plus all your child's. And then, because I do think just as women in general, we are wired to have that mother instinct, especially once you become a mother, no matter what. But it is like life happens, right, to all of us all the time. So, if you are struggling, it's so hard because you just feel such guilt, like you should have it all together. And, we talked about this, social media presents it like all these other moms have it all together. And my God, they have so much time. They're even creating all these perfect crafts and their house looks amazing. But like, you don't really know the truth. That could be the truth, or that could be that she is struggling with an addiction behind the scenes that we don't even see,
Yeah, so, very much. So I think we take on more than we're actually capable of because we're trying to meet this impossible standard of being able to do it all and have it all. And when you push yourself, we're not limitless. We are human beings. And especially for me, I realized in that time that I was trying to push myself to survive the divorce, survive the separation, survive the awful abusive environment I was finding myself in, and still be like this amazing mom without asking for help from anybody to support me. And I couldn't do it. And I ended up, realizing that the drugs, the pain medications gave me like a false sense of peace and, like everything's chill. I can totally do this, and shoves down the pain for a little while. But just because you shove down the pain for a little bit doesn't mean it's not going to come rearing back 10 times as much afterwards. And you just dig yourself in a really deep pit. So yeah, man, I, it's funny. I remember telling my mom when I was going to NA Narcotics Anonymous meetings, and you do like the big book, all the steps and everything. And I was like, Mom, I think everybody should do this, whether you have a problem or not, because it's just about learning about yourself and who you are and how you cope and how you're going through this life. It's so much more than just the whatever it is. If it's the alcohol or the pill, that's just the medium. That you're depending on the chemical, but it's about the pain deep down and who you are and what your story is, and everybody has that. So
Oh
yeah,
my
I
God, I
recommend it to
know.
anybody.
I know. They really need to do a 12-step program for just life, for just, yeah, yeah. Even if maybe you don't. And like for me, I've always been fully transparent about my weight issues, over the years, like, and going to therapy, I realized, my catalyst was food. Like I was a binge eater. I always, like, if I was stressed, I always ate. Like for me, food was the drug of like covering up. The same thing. Like the therapist is the one that made me realize like I was in this incredibly just like crazy work environment on the Kane show, and like how abusive the behavior and toxic. She's the one. And then I was like, oh, that's why I'm binge eating. That's why I'm emotional eating. And then once I could see that, just like what you were saying, you begin to unpack like, wait a minute, what's the emotion behind why is this happening? And then that behavior that person is doing to me, or I'm responding, is that right? Is that normal? What's going on with me?
Yeah, absolutely. What's going on with me, and what can I do about it now? The getting to the rock bottom in your addiction where you ask for help is like, it's the rock bottom and the worst moment of your life, but it's also like being reborn. It is a clean slate where you get to figure out, why do I do what I do? What in my environment is causing me, so much pain? And I learned about boundaries. When I was in rehab, I had never thought about boundaries before. And I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to keep certain people out. I'm allowed to say no to pain that's being inflicted on me. I don't know why. It had just never dawned on me before.
It doesn't, right?
Boundaries
We're
are
not
like the
taught
best thing that ever
boundaries,
happened to
really.
me.
Okay. So, Natasha, obviously all this resonated so much with everybody. And you and I talked and we said, let's do a part 3 and let's ask people what they still want to know. Unanswered questions that we need to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you, but I received hundreds of messages with questions, wanting to know more, and so many people were like, it was just too short. I didn't want it to end, which is so
I know,
sweet.
which was
I
like,
love.
we were talking for over 2 hours and like, I needed a whole nother box of tissues. I'm like, we were drained. It was like, so, okay. So we obviously put out, we asked people for questions, and I thought we could kind of lay it out like this. A lot of people, as you mentioned, struggling with addiction, have family members that are addiction. So I thought we could talk about questions there, questions around our mental health. We'll get into a little bit of Kane show. A lot of people always want to know who you and I still talk to. And then just some advice, our goals, and maybe other feedback for people listening. How's that sound?
Perfect. By the way, did you know, like, this is how uncool of a person I am now. I guess I'm old. Did you know they call it the tea when it's like the gossip? Like
Yes.
when my
I know
girls
that.
get in the car, they're like, do you want the tea for today? So I guess this will be the tea, that one part about who we still talk to and gossip from the Kane show. But I didn't know that. I'm so old.
I love
Ugh.
you so much. You're like, have you heard about this thing called the tea? Like, yes.
I
Oh
think
my God.
I'm my mother.
Well, you've had some other things going on in your life, so I think you're all set. I think you're all set. All right, so let's start with this. I loved Kayla's. Kayla had submitted a video, which of course you and I both lost because we didn't screen record it, but it was fine. The
We're
gist of
so
Kayla,
on top of this.
I know. Speaking of not being current, Kayla had a great question for you. And she wanted to know, she said, both of her parents have been in recovery for several years now. They've been sober. But she says, as a daughter, she's obviously been through a lot. And she wants to know, how do you best support somebody who is in recovery?
Man, I loved her question. I can't imagine having both of your parents in recovery. So my heart goes out to Kayla, but it sounds like she's really in a strong, good place right now. So that is an excellent question. And I would say one of the best things you can do is give them time and space and listen. Be understanding that recovery is not a magic wand that all of a sudden go to some meetings or you go do a 30-day program and now that's it, you're better. You're not going to be have any more slips or ups and downs. It is very much 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. So you need to be patient, you need to wait, and most of all, you need to just have non-judgmental support, unconditional love, that you're not judging this person. You are helping to move on from the past. A lot of it is letting go of the hurt that this person has caused to you, which I absolutely recommend, going to like Al-Anon meetings. It's like 12-step meetings, but for the family members of the alcoholic or the addict, because then that'll help you learn how to deal with a lot of the pain that this person inflicted on you, and also what you can do, to help the person in this journey, because it's a long journey. It's not, there's no cure. You don't
Yeah.
you don't just get better and then that's it. You'll struggle with it the rest of your life. So just patience and unconditional support, and also getting your own support.
Oh my God. So important, right? So important. This one was really great too. How did you both heal, and does it get any easier? And this question was for you and me in the sense, I think, of just, you know, obviously you divorced Kane. I left the show. We both had tons of, lots of anger and feelings towards that. So and I'm curious, I wanted to ask you this too, because it took me a long time to really, I feel like, heal from that experience. So how did you heal? And was there ever a point you felt it got easier?
Man, that is a great question. And honestly, I'm still healing from it. There's still a lot of anger or pain that bubbles up sometimes when, I'll get triggered thinking about something from the past, or finding out something even now that I didn't know about that he did. So wow. I mean, it takes time. You don't ever just fully get over it, but I spoke about boundaries before, and I think it's interesting when you're in like this controlling abusive relationship. I don't know about you, but you almost get kind of addicted to the pain and the drama and the way this person treats you, and you get stuck in this cycle where it's kind of hard to break away from allowing it to continue to impact you and inflict pain on you. So boundaries definitely gave me some space
Mm.
to then heal. Like I needed to push away, because it's just because you get better and you want to heal doesn't mean the attacks aren't going to still keep coming. So it's kind of giving yourself some space from that person as much as you can. That was definitely what helped me the most.
I was going to ask you that, like, to elaborate on that. Like with Kane, what boundaries did you create? Like once you were in recovery, and I mean, I don't know. I feel like he had no boundaries with Sammy and Eric and myself and
Oh
Matt.
yeah.
So
No,
I'm
I
like,
remember once. Yeah, no, definitely. I remember my sponsor, because telling me like, I want to take away your phone, because it was just nonstop getting emails or text messages of the new thing that he was upset about, the new thing that I went wrong, and every time I got one, like I lived in nonstop panic and anxiety and fear. And so I'd be doing all this great work healing myself, and then it'd be, bring, get a new email of, you know, him sucking me right back into that controlling relationship. So she actually got to the point where she was like, okay, between these hours, I'm taking away your phone. That, either that or you turn your email off, or you turn your text off from him, you put it on block from, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then you have an hour where you deal with his crap, you deal with his drama, you go through the emails and the texts, and then you shut it back down. Because there was something about just that he could reach me anytime, all day, all night. Like it was like I was at his beck and call to be hurt all over again. That really kept me in it. That was probably one of the best pieces of advice that I got.
Oh my God. Well, look, for me, it was two things, right? I mean, finally, it was, did you take the
My phone
phone?
fell over.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
Oh my God, this is such a mess.
We got a ton of
We're
questions.
so professional. Darn it. Okay, I think I'm good.
We're back. Well, for me, it was two things. It was actually getting the courage up to leave the show, because to your point of like getting addicted to the drama, I was so addicted to, my identity was the show, and I was working 14 hours a day. I mean, I didn't really date anybody successfully all through my 20s because we got up at 3:30 in the morning and had to be at work at like 4:30. And then I did the Sarah show after, and then we had to go home and show prep for 3 hours. So it was like, and then I had to go to bed at 7:30 or 8 o'clock to get up at 3:30. So for me, it was getting the courage up to leave. And I can remember, going to therapy saved me, which, you had your own experience of recovery. My therapist was the one that basically said, like I said in the other episodes, this isn't a normal work environment. This is, his behavior is not normal. Something mentally is going on with him to behave like this. This isn't how work environments function. So, finally getting the courage up to leave and getting out of that situation. And then it took me, like I was saying to you before we started, probably 3 or 4 years before I even got to a place where I could like think about forgiving him, forgiving management, and beginning to look at it from a place of like, I had good experiences there. Kane taught me a lot. Like it was at least 4 years. I was so consumed with being so angry with him, and just, and the same thing, friends would send me things like, oh, Kane show doing this or whatever. And I would say to them, stop. I don't care. I don't want to know anything about what's going on with him. I don't care if he's syndicated nationwide. So I had to learn some boundaries too, but it took me a long time, I feel like, to get to a place of like looking at him as somebody who really, it was sad. Like it was sad what happened to him, and it only got worse. And then being grateful for the gifts that he did give me.
Yeah, very much so. No, I totally agree and can relate. That's the one odd thing about my situation is, he's on the radio. So like I literally had to stop having the radio on in the car. Couldn't listen to anything that I couldn't hear a commercial with his ad. I remember, I like watching the Today Show on NBC4, but they would run the ads for the Kane show, and it's just like, oh my God, you're everywhere. But yeah, definitely. And the funny thing about like when do you feel like you can heal and not be angry anymore? I felt like it was there. My turning point was once I started finding some happiness on my own and some peace, that then I was able to see him with a little more empathy. One of the things they teach you in recovery is to let go of resentments, and to actually like pray for the person that you're so angry about, and the things that you want for your life, to pray for them. So when I would be, at nighttime doing my, little prayers by, the side of the bed, I would say, I pray that he finds love. I pray that he finds joy. I pray that he finds healing and forgiveness of himself. Anything that I wanted for me, I started asking for him. And it really softened my heart some towards him.
Isn't that
I'm
so
telling you,
fun?
everybody should go through 12 steps. It's so helpful. And it's free therapy.
Isn't that so hard though, to pray for him? Oh my God. Because my therapist, it's funny. I had such a great therapist, and a lot of the steps of 12 steps, she integrated into therapy in different ways, but she would say that to me too. What would it be in therapy? We would sit there. She'd be like, what would it be like to wish him well? I'm like, I can't do it. But you eventually, years in, I was like, I can do it. I could, but at first, man, wow, you would pray for him. That's
Yeah. And, even if you don't mean it when you say it, because I definitely didn't mean it the first few times, eventually you start to mean the words. So yeah, just even if you can't get there yet to mean it, just the act of saying it is like the first little step on that journey, and
Um,
finding for somebody that may not deserve it, but that's kind of the key in your own healing.
all right. I'm curious if you can elaborate on this because I liked this question. This person wanted to remain anonymous. Absolutely. I love this interview. Thank you so much for Natasha sharing her raw feelings. My child's father passed away as well. And I felt so much guilt for feeling relief. I wondered if maybe Natasha could talk more about this. Does she still carry guilt about Kane passing? Does she feel guilty about having this kind of dichotomy of, you guys feel a little bit of relief that he's passed, but also guilty? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, man, that's a great question, and a really tough situation. My heart goes out to her. Um, I do still have a hard time with that. With Gosh, it's so hard to, maybe verbalizing it is actually what really helps, is getting it out there that yeah, my life is better now. My kids have been through this tremendous loss, and I would give anything to have their father back, to do, to be in their lives, to walk them down the aisle when they get married. I think about these things and that he's not going to be there, but I don't want him back as he was, because it's like that's the fantasy of, yeah, I wish he was back, but not as he was. That was just, it was hurting all of us, and it's okay to say now that we're, in a better place now, without him. It seems like it should seem so wrong to say, but I think being able to own your feelings for what they are and not judge your feelings is has been really helpful. That why wouldn't I feel that way? I mean, my gosh, I'm not, a saint, Mother Teresa. I'm obviously still going to have some feelings, and outside of that, that's just logically what it was. It was a really painful, awful environment for the three of us, me and both of my girls. And now that one piece that was causing the pain has been removed. So of course we're going to feel better. And I don't think she should feel ashamed and guilty for feeling that way.
It is a strange feeling though, isn't it? I mean, and we touched on this in the first two podcast series we did. It's the same, I think, how we all felt that were on the show. It's like, oh my God, we never have to worry about him popping back up when we least expect it ever again. Like, but also at the same time, like his life ended in his early 40s. It is a weird feeling.
It's very weird feeling. It's incredibly sad. Um, and oh, I thought you were going to make me cry with this one. It's incredibly sad that he didn't get the chance to be better and to get better and to experience healing. Um, but I can't change that. I can't do anything about that now. And I was telling you this the other day, Sarah, and it probably sounds like I'm crazy, but it's crazy because this is a person that I had so much hate and anger toward. Out of anybody in the world, was causing me more pain than anybody on this earth ever has. But now that he's passed, I like talk to him, which is crazy. I talk to him, like, oh my gosh, you would just roll over about this one. I'm doing this podcast with Sarah, but in like a friendly way. Like I feel like he would be proud and understand now that he's free from all of the anger and the mental illness that couldn't keep him from being like a normal loving person before. I don't know. Now that he's free from that, I feel like, gosh, I like him a lot better now.
I
That's awful.
know.
That's awful. But yeah, I don't know. I have a better relationship with him now.
No, I feel you. I mean, I think the same about him. I think he is totally free. And like I said to you, and now I'm going to cry. But I do think he really wanted to be that good person. I think it was just, you could see, again, I couldn't see it when I was in it, but looking back, you could see the mental illness taking over, and the addiction taking over because when we did first all start, he had these big dreams. He was like, we're going to, replace the Elvis Duran show in New York City. We're going to be the biggest radio morning show. This is what I want to do. Then I'm taking my family. I'm going to go back to Tampa and you guys can buy houses there and come when you want. You could do, I mean, he really was like, he did, he wanted all those goals and like, he wanted all of us to do it together, but you could see as the years went on, like, and so many factors, like we've talked about. I think there were a lot of people around him that enabled him, whether it was that therapist you talk about or different management people or lawyers or whoever it was, but then there was his own clear issues of narcissism and, addiction, all that stuff that took over. And then it just, he never got that chance. Like you said, he couldn't fight it, I think, at the end.
Yeah. If I could go back in time and, man, I know it's like we just wanted the show to be huge, to be this massive, massive success, to be syndicated and everything you just said, move back to Tampa. And like those things ended up being what were our downfall. I
Mhm.
wish I could have hit the pause button back when it was just DC and we were doing well and we had, okay money, but it wasn't huge and massive because that's when even though like we were hitting all of our goals in an upstream, we were just going downhill at the same time as him as a person and us as a family. It's like the fame, the money, the ego, the people that are then around you that, don't have your best interest at heart. It was just a sad, toxic situation that those things that we wanted so much ended up being our downfall.
This was another question, which I thought was great. And knowing Kane better than anyone. The question is for Natasha. Natasha, did you ever feel like Kane knew that he was ill?
Oh, that is a good question. I think he knew deep down, as far as like the mental health went, because he did want to get help. He did, want us to go to counseling. He did want to see a psychiatrist. So I think he knew there was something, but whether it was, this was a narcissistic person we were talking about. So whether it was his ego that just couldn't quite let him realize how bad the situation was or that he had this weakness. I'm not sure if he ever could fully recognize it. It's interesting. I after he passed and I was, oh gosh, it's gonna make me cry too. Dealing with like the life insurance company and everything. And they had told me that he passed in March, that the December before he tried to up his life insurance policy, tried to double it. I think he knew that he was so sick, and it just kills me that he wanted to take care of us, but that he knew it was that bad and he wouldn't ask for help. I guess he had just like given up at that point, but so I think he knew it at the end how sick he was. Losing the show was like the nail in the coffin for him. I mean, that show was his whole world. So when he lost it, I think he just gave up on everything. But he definitely seemed to know it at the end. But I guess instead of wanting to get help, he just gave up.
Oh, yeah, it's so hard to know, right? I mean, because he was such a smart person too, like so smart
Very
and yeah, in everything academically and strategizing wise. And yeah, I mean, just what I would hear from other people the last like year of his life, it was so bad, just so isolated, like you said, in his home, and the addiction was so bad at that point. Um, but God, that kind of gives you goosebumps that maybe he did know something,
he had to.
just feeling.
I mean, but yeah, there was no reason for him to try and change the life insurance then. The girls were plenty taken care of with the policy that was already out. So he had to have known. He had to have.
Okay, what about this question that this is actually from Ella. She wrote, "How do you deal with someone who is always projecting their issues on you, making it always seem like you're the problem?" This is
Oh,
This is such a good one because my answer to it was quitting and getting away from him. But what did you do?
Wow, that is a tough one, man. I think, the first important piece is recognizing that, because you and I both know when you're in the middle of like a gaslighting type of situation, you start to believe the hype. You start to think, I am crazy. I am the problem. If I would just work harder, if I would just, support him more, do this or do that, then this will solve the problem, because that's what he's telling me. So once you can get to the point where you have that light bulb moment that maybe it's not me, that's huge. But I was telling you this, I remember when I was in rehab, and I think I mentioned on the other podcast, like he was trying to sabotage it, and it was so dumb. Like he was doing stuff like calling in and trying to speak to my personal counselor and tell her all these awful things about me that weren't even true. Or he tried to block the health insurance from paying for it so I would get kicked out. But then at the same time, he was trying to get them to keep me longer. Like he was just, like just sabotaging the
None of it.
experience.
Yeah, made sense. Yeah.
Counselor, and just in tears, I was like, I don't understand. This is where he wanted me to be. Like, why won't let me get better? And I'll never forget what she said. She said, lots of times when you have two sick people and one of them then gets better, the other one all of a sudden realizes, I can't keep projecting my stuff on that person and take the attention off of me and say that they're the problem, because now they're getting better. So now the spotlight's going to be on me and people are going to see me for what I am. So I need to not let them get better so I can continue to project everything onto them so people won't look at me. And the same thing applies when it's like gaslighting and somebody always saying something's wrong with you. It's because they don't want everybody to see that it's actually them. So as soon as you can have that light bulb moment and acknowledge that just because they're saying it doesn't make it true, I feel like is huge.
Oh my God. And I was telling you this, one of the things that I feel guilty is about on my time on the show is like with us, it was always like one person was the problem, right? So for years, and I feel guilty because Sammy, and this was somebody else's question. Someone else's question was, did Kane treat men badly too? My experience was yes. I mean, my experience was when we first started, Sammy was the target. And like when he threw keys, they were at Sammy. When he kicked a trash can and broke a Shakira picture that was in the studio, that was towards Sammy. And I don't know. And Sammy, Sammy is amazing, but like he was late, and that would like set Kane off, and so like a couple of times like Kane had gotten in his face and like Sammy had cried. And I always felt so bad. Like I never stood up for Sammy because Sammy was so young. He was 20. He wasn't even 21 when he started the show. And he'd moved here from Iowa, like all by himself. His family was away. He didn't have anyone. And he dropped out of college for the Kane show. So I felt so guilty for years, never sticking up for him. And once Sammy left, because it was always about Sammy was the problem, Sammy was the problem. And the show's going to be great once Sammy goes. And then, of course, Sammy left. And then it was like, I was the problem. I was the one that didn't show prep enough, didn't write enough War of the Roses stories, didn't write enough Kane scams, didn't do this, didn't do that. And then he would start CCing our bosses like, Sarah didn't show prep enough. She's, trying to do things at Fox 5. So it like, then I was the problem. Then I left, and it just kept going from a person to a person. So I felt the same way until Danny left. I thought it was us. And then once Danny finally left and Mel, I was like, okay, nobody can deny now there's something, it's him, because nobody can make it work there.
Yeah, nobody could deny it, except I feel like he still got away with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. He was a master. I used to call him Teflon. I'm like, he just slides through every one of these situations. I don't know how. Yeah.
Okay, this has brought us kind of to the show, and I think like where people stand and how our feelings are towards people that are still there. Because people had a lot of questions like, are we still friends with, Mel, Sammy, all that on the show? I'm happy to speak to that. I mean, I speak to everyone except for, Eric, and there's no hard feelings. I just don't see Eric. I haven't spoken to him for years. And we talked briefly when Kane passed. But then after that, it's been so many years since we were friends that I don't have any connection. I wish him all good things, but we're not friends anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to speak to that, or is there anyone you talk to, you don't talk to,
Um,
or how you feel?
it's funny, I spoke about this during the podcast that, once he announced our divorce on the radio and, I was outside the circle, nobody would speak to me. There was not one person, even though we were all such a family before, that would stick up for me, that sent me a message, that tried to, even if it was off the air, show some support. But then once everybody started to experience it themselves, then some people started coming around. Danny and I have spoken throughout the years and remained friends. I haven't talked to her in a little while, but I know she's going through some stuff, but I just wish her the best. You and I are the closest out of everybody. Um, there's nobody from the morning show now that I would say I'm friends with. Mel has been really supportive and sweet and sent me some nice messages. Yeah, I really, the only friend like I have over at iHeart is Toby, and I don't even think he does Hot 99 stuff, does he? Doesn't he host another morning show?
Yeah, I don't think he's a part of 99.5 anymore.
But
Yeah.
he was part of that world before, and he's been really supportive since Peter died. But that's about it. I think I don't know. They
And
were
it's
left with some really big shoes to fill, and good luck with that. But yeah, not really a part of my world.
And you and I were talking about this too. I know, like, you and I didn't talk for years because it was just, and I said this to Eric, I like didn't want to be anywhere near Kane because I felt like he was such a manipulator. It was like I understood, and I'm not saying Eric ever did this or anything, but I always felt like anybody that was around him or knew him or had to associate with him, like, I don't know, he was just a master of finding things out like we've talked about, and then like using that against you or popping up out of nowhere. He was so, I don't know if vindictive is the word, because it really was a mental illness, but it felt so vindictive in ways like I never even spent time thinking about. So I know for me, like once you and I, like once I just was like, oh, I can't even get anywhere near him. And I never spoke to
Yeah.
anybody that was around him. Even like Toby included, because I'm like, I just, you just don't
No,
know. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, for me, I don't want to tell any stories and just like throw people under the bus because there's just no good reason to. But after he announced everything about the divorce, everybody talked about me badly on the air, everybody that was left. And off the air, they did some really horrible things to me at his bidding. I guess just to want to be in his favor, but they absolutely were a part of tormenting me. Um, every single one of them. So I don't, I'm not angry anymore that I need to, like deal with it. It was in the past and it happened, but I don't see us being all buddy buddy friends now. And I also haven't really gotten any apologies for why they treated me the way they did.
Oh yeah, people wanted to know that. Has anyone from Kane's past ever apologized to either of you guys?
Yeah,
What's your experience?
I did get John and I had a phone call right after Peter passed, and he did give me some sort of an apology, although it was also a lot of, I didn't know it wasn't true, a lot of excuses as to why he did the things he did. But he did give me some sort of apology. I never talked to Eric. Yeah, there were a couple of people that sent apologies after he died saying, "Oh, now I can tell you that, I shouldn't have thought these things about you." But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I,
hard. I mean, you and I talked about being painted as crazy. And I feel like now too, I don't get an apology from anybody, or I don't need one. I feel for people that are
yeah,
still in that situation. And, I know what he was like. And look, I mean, it was an open saying at Hot 99.5 when I was there, you're with us or you're against us. So I know what that's like if you're in it, there's a fear and that's what they want. They want you to kind of be afraid to go against the grain. Um, so I try to have compassion for people, I think, still in it. We're in it. And it's hard. They're trying to save their jobs. It's a whole complicated thing. But
Yeah, I know. I know. The funny thing is I actually have more empathy for Peter than I do for them, which is the crazy thing because he was the puppeteer behind the strings, pulling their strings, making them do his bidding. But I guess I know how sick he was, so I have more compassion for him, but I don't know, there's probably some anger there I should tease out and go to therapy over, let go of at some point,
we all
if I'm being totally honest.
Oh, well, please, me too. I mean, it's a work in progress. I mean, always, right? For all of us. Well, look, I'd have to ask you just because you and I both got, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of messages, and I don't even know who
Oh
Skittles
yeah.
is. but
You know,
but now I need to see Skittles. But people, I guess, okay, so people want to know why Intern John has Skittles, who is like, I guess the dog that you guys all had or
yes.
something.
So this is so funny. And I received so many messages about
I
this. It's
Skittles
insane.
needs.
I wasn't going to address it, but there's just been so many. I feel like it would be really weird to say nothing about it now. But Skittles is an adorable border collie, a dog that the girls had with Peter. So it was Peter's dog with the girls at their house.
Got it. Okay. That now.
So,
Okay.
uh, all right, I'm just going to lay it out there and people can take it however they want. There's no like big bad villain here. It's just a crappy situation, I think, for everybody. But basically, what happened is after Peter went to the hospital and the paramedics took him away, I brought the girls and the dog back with me. They were very upset and I love dogs and everything. And so, it just made sense. Let's keep him with the girls. The thing you have to understand about border collies and that like herding breeds is they can get overwhelmed, overstimulated really easily.
Okay.
And so, and my house is complete chaos. So the girls came in and Skittles came in, and I think it was just too much for him. Like he didn't know where Peter was. He was in a brand new house. Harry was like 2 or 3 at the time and was running all over. And he just kind of short circuited a little and he nipped. He didn't bite Harry, but he nipped at the air. I think it was too much stimulation and too much change. So I called the nanny who was helping to take care of Peter's house while Peter was in the hospital, and I said, "Hey, can I bring him back? Can you keep him because this happened and it's just too much right now at this moment, and I'll get him again when I can." So I brought him back to the nanny and he stayed back at the house. Peter's dad then drove down to be with Peter in the hospital. So Skittles stayed at the house with him. Then after Peter passed, had to figure out what to do with the dog. And I had told Peter's dad that I wanted to keep Skittles. I need to figure out a way to bring him back, to talk to some behaviorists and vets and figure out the situation, because obviously I can't have him biting my kid, but I thought we could work through it. So I actually, because John had been very helpful with if there's anything I can do, for the family, I want to help out. So I asked him a favor and I said, "Can you keep the dog for me temporarily until I can figure out a way to like incorporate him into the house, like slowly adjust him?" And he said, "Absolutely." He was more than happy to. So Skittles went to go stay with John at my request. Then after, I don't know, maybe it was a few months, I had been talking to, it was a lot of chaos because Peter had just died. We had to go through the house. The girls
Oh,
were in extreme trauma. Everything was nuts. But I didn't forget about the dog. And I talked to my vet. I talked to a behaviorist, and they said, oh, well, yeah, let me just keep going with it in this direction. So I talked to them and they said, yeah, there's some things you can do. He may just always be like, he may bite a kid. We don't know, but we can try and do some things like have him meet Harry, my little one. at a park, somewhere outside of the house, like, or back at the other house. There's just some ways to try and see if we could ease him into it. Because the thing is, when I was going over, it took weeks to go through Peter's house. I would bring Harry with me, and Harry and Skittles would play in the house and get along fine in Peter's house. It was when we took Skittles out. So I finally, I texted John and I said, okay, I'm ready to start acclimating Skittles to bring him back. Let's set up a time to meet at a park and, start doing what my vet recommended. And the way I remember it is I didn't get a reply and I wasn't sure what was going on. And then I got, I think finally he told me something like, you need to talk to Peter's dad about this. Oh, I remember. He said it was very just like business-like. He's like, as Peter's dad is the executor of the estate, you need to go through him. And I was like, what? So then what I heard from Peter's dad was that I guess the nanny had tried to bring Skittles to her house and she has a grandbaby, and Skittles did the same thing and nipped at the grandbaby. And then I think John had told the father-in-law that he thought Skittles was going to bite people or kids. So my father-in-law, Peter's dad, was very worried that somehow he was going to be responsible. He was responsible for this dog as he was the manager of the estate, and that somehow the dog was part of the estate, and that he couldn't in good conscience send the dog to be with me, thinking that it would put my son in danger. So I went back and forth with him several times. I put him in touch with my vet. I wrote so many emails begging him, we can't not get the dog back. Like, the girls are grieving their dad and they're asking for their dog. Like, we got to try. Like, I can't do that to them too. And I got a no back that, he was too worried that Skittles was going to bite my son. And that he said that Skittles was very happy with John and was already settled in, and that they were, a nice little family together now. And he didn't want to remove him from that because the dog was happy. So it was a crummy situation. I understand where my ex-father-in-law was coming from. I strongly, vehemently disagreed and said we had to try. There were things that the vet was saying we could try before we made that decision, and tried saying, like, I'm the one who took the dog in. This should be my decision. But John became very close with Peter's dad during that time. And I don't know what conversations were had other than I got a no. He decided to leave Skittles with John because that was better for everybody.
Got it. Okay.
So there you go.
There we know what happened to Skittles. So people have been very curious about them. Okay. So, people wanted to know that aspect of the story. So I think we now know, everything with Skittles. I wanted to kind of move on though to some advice, because so many people wanted your advice. So many people especially when it came to the court system. So this was a great question that was posed to you. I love the Natasha interview. I'm just so proud of Natasha, and it's great to hear she's doing well. Could Natasha talk more about navigating the court system? How would she do it now? How would Natasha navigate the court system now? Any red flags?
Wowza. Yeah, I so appreciate that question because I would do it all completely differently. I mentioned some of this before in the other podcast, but just about trusting your gut. And no matter what these attorneys are telling you or your ex is telling you, it doesn't make it true. I don't know how many times they would tell me, oh, if you fight this, you're going to not get any money, or you're going to lose the kids, or just, oh, it was so frustrating. I wish I would have just listened to my instinct on situations, but navigating the court system is tough. But I did a lot of after the fact, like Googling my questions, like some of them, like I was wondering, okay, here's an example. So my car that I was driving, okay, so like here's a good question. At the time, I was driving a car and Peter's name was on the lease. And he, on one of my reels I'll put up, I'll tell the whole story because it's a pretty funny story. But he kind of repossessed the car himself and then said I couldn't have it back because his name was on the lease. And I thought, well, that makes sense. I guess it's true. Turns out now, like I've Googled the question to look it up, and it's not true. Like usually the court system finds like whichever vehicle you were using, you
Uh,
can continue to keep, whether or not it's his name or your name on the lease. So many things about like the house. Can I stay in the house if my name isn't on the title? What if I can't afford to pay the mortgage? Does he have to continue to contribute? These are all things that I kind of just, because you're so scared and you're so broken, like right after you separate from, this person that you loved, it's a painful experience, that when these types of icky situations come up, you can't always see clearly through them. So when I had, his attorneys or him telling me, like, nope, you can't be in the house or you can't have the car or, I'm going to have the kids on this day, even though it's supposed to be your day. I just kind of took his word still as truth, or his attorney's words, because I thought, why would these people, like, they can't flat out lie, right? No, they can flat out lie. So if I could go back, I would trust my gut more and I would
okay.
educate myself, even if it's just going online and Googling in the state of Maryland, um, what do I do if, my kid's dad picks them up and it's really my day, that type of thing, whatever the situation is. I just start trying to learn about it because it's actually all out there. And I don't know why it didn't dawn on me to just, I guess because I thought I'm paying these lawyers, I should probably listen to them.
You think you're
It
paying
dawned on me
experts,
to
right?
figure it out myself.
Was there any, okay, so aside from Google, was there a person that kind of stepped in and started making you think like you had more power than what you thought? Was it recovery? Was there a book? Like, was there anything tangible where somebody started making you realize? Because I always think it's a lot of work, but it's interesting. I think if you can represent yourself sometimes when it comes to family court, if
Mhm.
you're in a good
Yeah.
mental place to do it, a lot of times you can end up getting a lot more than you think.
It's called being pro se when you represent yourself without an attorney. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless, so I talked about, I finally settled with him because I didn't have any more money. I kind of wish in that situation I had thought about, well, I can continue to fight him and represent myself, instead of just settling. But it's good to have an attorney's advice as well if you can afford to have one. But the thing is, it's so easy to rack up a ton of legal bills doing things that you could be doing yourself. So you can try to keep the costs down by, even if you have to write your own court motion. um, Cat just walks across the
Yeah.
microphone. Um, there's a lot of it you can do yourself and maybe just use the attorneys as minimal as possible. But honestly, Sarah, I wish there had been somebody or some magic book I had read in the moment. But all of this I learned after the fact,
Mm,
kind of
okay.
after it was too late. I think it was towards the end. Peter was constantly taking me to court, constantly. And after recovery, I kind of got the self confidence that I don't have to do what he says or what his attorney says. And I just went through so many life experiences where um, I went along with what him or the experts told me. Well, this is what a judge is going to make you do. And then in hindsight, I started to realize as I just learned more and grew more confident that that may not have necessarily been true. So a lot of it was more after the fact. But what if I could do it differently, man? I would trust my gut. I would not have settled and caved into things that deep down I felt uncomfortable about. Pick what your deal breakers are. If you want to, you know, have your kids every Wednesday is important to you for some reason, like then stick to it. If it's important to you to stay in the house, if it's important to you to have Christmas, like just, I would have stuck with my gut on the things that I got that icky feeling. I really don't want to give this up. And I remember the lawyers telling me, well, but you can change it later, or a judge is going to make you. And in hindsight, that was totally bad advice.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
I know, hard to figure that
it is
out.
hard.
But
I started recording different reels with like the 5 things that you should absolutely do before you separate, and 5 things you should do once you separate. How to deal with disparagement of the ex. The ex is talking badly about you. There's so many things that I feel passionate about getting out there. So I'm just going to start putting them out as small things, or maybe you and I, if we keep doing podcasts, can throw
yeah,
some of it out there. But yeah, there's so much to it, but it is manageable. You can get what you need.
um, okay, and this maybe you can talk about how much you want to speak to this, but people had an interesting question how Kane Peter was about you getting remarried. And then obviously you talked about being a single mom and but you were co-parenting in this beautiful place with Harry. So I thought maybe you could talk about those together. How was somebody like Kane, who we know had mental health and addiction issues, when you got remarried? Was that like so stressful?
Um, yeah, the funny thing is he didn't say a lot to my face about it. Like, he didn't act like he was jealous, but I definitely have learned, especially since he passed, and people have been coming out of the woodwork, like old babysitters and stuff for him, and telling me stories that he was very, very obsessed. And I think me getting remarried just like threw a stick of dynamite on the situation, to be honest, because that's when things really got so much worse all over again. His old babysitter messaged me after our podcast came out and said, like, he used to drive by my house at night all the time once I got remarried and I was engaged. So yeah, I can definitely see how, and he would do things like tell the girls awful things about their stepdad. You know, my Harry's dad and I, we weren't living in luxury. We were certainly very comfortable, but we didn't have a lot of extra money to spend. So he did things like he sued me that I wasn't allowed to have my website anymore. Just things to like get at our marriage and break it down that, unfortunately it did have an impact. But the one good thing out about it, and the good thing about going through such a horrible co-parenting divorce and situation is, Harry's dad and I saw firsthand how awful that was for the girls and for us, and decided we are going to do the exact opposite. Yes, this is broken and unfortunately we're going to have to split, but man, are we going to co-parent like champions. So we have made such an effort, because there's still, icky feelings, even with the most amicable
Sure.
separation. It's painful, but we said, especially in front of the kids, but even for real, we're going to stay friends. We're always going to put the kids first, the girls and Harry. We're going to try and have family dinners together still, once every couple of weeks. We're going to celebrate holidays together, because nobody wins in a divorce, especially the kids, worst
Right.
of all, kids. But you can kind of taper that pain that they're going through by trying to be friends and trying to co-parent with respect for one another. Because if you can show each other kindness and respect, the kids are going to see that, and I really think it makes a big difference, considering I've done it both ways.
We've done it both ways. Okay, wait. I wanted to go back because that was actually another question people had for both of us: is didn't Kane buy or steal your websites? And you mentioned it there because that was
Yeah.
I remember that, right? Wasn't that a big deal? What was the truth? Did he end up taking?
Yeah. So, well, like, 2 things happened. First, here's one of the things, like, this one's quick and for free, but one of the tidbits that I'm putting up in my reels is change all your passwords. Like, as soon as
Ah,
you separate, change all of them. I hadn't thought to change the one for my website domain ownership of Little Pink Monster. So
ah,
he transferred it to himself, and wouldn't give it back, which is why I then had to start Little Pink Monsters, plural. So yeah, he took that one, and then he took me to court years later. My followers probably remember I posted about how he was keeping the girls when it was my day, and I was starting to tell the truth of my situation. So he decided he was going to take away my Instagram and my Little Pink Monsters, and took me to court over it. Which, of course, the judge said, "Dude, free speech. She's like, she's allowed to say this stuff. You don't have a non-disclosure agreement." So cost me a lot of money, but I got out of that one. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what happened to me. What happened with yours? I don't think I realized that it happened to you.
Yes. Well, when we were, so for a period of time, I did the show Sarah, Ty, and Mel on what was DC's
Oh, I
1073. It was,
forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, it was famously Mix 1073 for years, and now it's been sold. Anyway, so I don't know if he bought, I don't know if DC's 1073 or maybe I don't know, but he bought something very close to DC's 1073.com. I think maybe he did buy that. And he rerouted it to the definition of failure, like in
Oh my
so when people would search,
God.
it would go to just like failure, which was kind of funny actually. And then, but
That's
you know,
creative.
I but then he ended up buying Mel and Ty, who was our co-host, their names. And I do believe, I'm not sure what happened, but I do believe they got them back, I think. So I don't know. I
I
think
always heard that he rerouted Mel's to like the definition of shit or something awful like that. Was that true?
I don't know. I think you're thinking the DC's 1073, but he was
Maybe,
squatting on
or
theirs.
maybe that's how I heard it trickling down through the gossip, the radio gossip mill.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the other thing. Oh yeah. What were you going to say?
Oh, I just said so crappy. It's like we can laugh about it now because he was really clever in his ways to terrorize people. But like, my gosh, like who does that?
Well, also who does that? I mean, your show is already number one. So it was like, God, don't you have things to focus on other than what we're doing or building? But, I'm sure they were very worried that we had this morning show and,
Well,
Sammy was
it's
on
like
and
we talked about, nobody could be bigger. Nobody could be happy without him. I wasn't allowed to be happy with him. You weren't allowed to be successful or happy. And he would stay obsessed about it. It didn't matter if his show was number one and you guys were or weren't a threat. It was that he could never let go.
Absolutely. Final question, although honestly, we could do 8 more parts and maybe we will. We're having a good time doing all this.
Yes.
Someone wrote, Natasha, I'd love to know your life goals now. How has your trajectory shifted?
Wow. That's really interesting. I mean, my life goals now, number one, are I'm in this blessing of a situation, gosh, you're going to make me cry. I was just this morning, I was watching a TV show and the woman was sleeping in her kid's bed. And I remembered a moment when the girls were supposed to be with me and he had kept them from me. And I slept in Sam's bed because it was just like that unbelievable yearning and hurt when you want to be with your children and you can't. And I was thinking back to that and she was sitting on the couch with me, watching TikTok videos. And I was like, oh my God, I have her. I have both of them every single day for the rest of their lives. I need to live that. I need to savor that every single day that I have them now. I'm never going to have to yearn to be with them on a Christmas or on their birthdays, at least till they're 18 and out of the house in their own lives. So I want to savor that every single day beyond anything else. Oh God, you're killing me. And
no, it's true. I saw this thing this weekend. It was just scrolling through my Instagram feed and it said, remember when what you currently have is what you used to pray for. And for me, that got me this weekend because I'm like, all these, I want all these other things to happen here in LA, but I'm like, remember when you just wanted to be in LA and now you're here? Like, that's the gift,
It's amazing. We forget about it so quickly, but man, you nailed it. Absolutely. So I'm trying to savor that and live in that every day. And then man, I just feel like I have been waiting for a very long time to speak my truth and it just never quite felt right yet. And all of a sudden now I just like, man, when you asked me if I want to do the podcast, it was just like this peace and this release, like somebody saying now, jump now. So I am just all about moving forward and using my story and my truth and everything that's happened, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, to help somebody else. And I'm so excited we're doing a part 3. It's maybe this is the way that it continues if people want to keep hearing more, or whether doing it through my Instagram or writing a book. I don't know the medium yet, but that is my life goal, is to use this to empower women to maybe not have to be quite as hopeless as I was.
Yeah. And just to have a place, right? To go through everything, because we are still women, whether it is like an addiction, whether it's dealing with a spouse that has an addiction, or mental health. Finally people are talking about mental health and how much, I got that message from somebody this week. What they loved about our podcast is seeing how much somebody who's mentally ill and not being treated properly, how it destroys everything around them, everything around
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Their own happiness, their job, their coworkers, their kids, their ex-spouses, their current. And it's like, man, if we can get that message to somebody to just recognize it long before we recognize, because we had no idea. I had no idea for years that was really what was going on with him.
I mean, maybe this was always the plan, Sarah. Maybe this was the path.
No, you'll make me cry. You'll make me cry. Oh,
Seriously.
I don't know.
I
Because
mean, it's working
like,
for now. So just keep going. And gosh, that's one of the things I love about we talked about the downside of social media, but I love the online community of women and friendship and supporting one another through everything that, you just talked about.
and I think too, it's like,
just like this awesome, vulnerable, but honest place. I love it.
and my brother called me this week. He's been sober for 11 years.
Wow. Kudos.
I know, it's amazing, amazing. And he said to me too, it's like, he's like, and I think this is true. This is how I feel about Kane, is he's like, look at like how much Kane is still helping you. And I'm like, oh, that makes me cry. It's like, oh, he can't be here. And I'm sure this isn't like probably the help that Kane wanted to give us, but it's kind of cool that, he's helping, part of Kane is helping other people. And I think that's truly what, in his heart, he wanted to do. It was through entertainment, but sometimes it's a different way. So
I didn't agree with you more. I didn't agree with you more. And I honestly do think that he's proud of us now, and that we're both using everything that, not the bad stuff necessarily that we went through, or not only that, but the good stuff that he taught us to some honor in his name now, and some healing in his name now,
I feel like we tell the stories, like the controlling, manipulative stories, as just like maybe red flags for people. Again, I do feel like that wasn't who he was, but as it got worse and worse as the years went on, that part just took over, of course, right? Like, untreated and all those things. So it's like, I don't like talking negative about him anymore, but I think it's important to say those stories, because when they were happening at the time, again, I thought I was the catalyst for them. I didn't realize that there was an addiction issue here and really mental health issues that no one talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You think that you are completely alone in those moments. It's incredible to me, like how, I don't know if it's being selfish or what, but I just thought, I'm the only person in the world going through this. Like, nobody has felt pain like I feel right now. But now being able to speak about it and getting this response from all the amazing women that, are giving us feedback, is that I was telling one woman, I was like, you are not alone, but thank you for making me realize I'm not alone.
Right.
She was making me feel better. Yeah, man, it's just like, it's like this nice circle of love.
It is. Oh my God. And they're going to continue to reach out to both of us. Where can people follow you on Instagram and message you? And then we're just kind of said we've taken this one step at a time. So here's part 3. We'll see what happens. What people really wanted to part 3. So we did that, and we'll see from here where it goes. But where can people follow you?
Follow me on Instagram at Ms. Pink Monster, MS Pink Monster. And, I started setting aside an hour a day where I just sit down and I go through my DMs and I go through comments and I read every single one and try to respond to every single one, because that's what this is all about. So please, don't think of me as, like some person that's out there and unattainable. Send me a message. Let me know what you're going through, and let me know what you'd want to hear here, I would love to hear it, what people would like to see from us next and how we can help them.
Oh my God,
Wouldn't
110%.
you love that?
Yes. I mean, look, I'm healing through it. I mean, it's like, because like you said, you think you go along and you don't think there's any anger issues or resentment issues. And then something pops up or somebody, and you're like, oh, I still have work to do around that, which is like, if we're all being honest, it's everybody's life journey, it's different trigger things for people. So for me, it's like, I think I do have some unresolved like grief around, just things that I'm like letting out and talking about for the first time. And it's like, it's so good, for everybody, I think, listening and us sitting here.
Yeah, selfishly good for us too.
Yes. All right, Natasha, Elisa, we will see you soon.
All right, Sarah Fraser. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Bye. Oh my